Hi.
Hi, Ben.
How are you?
Thank you so much for
Yes,
taking
of
time
course.
out of your schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Brian Miyagishima.
Brian Miyagishima.
Miyagishima.
Great, good to have you. Check and see if your name tag is
Okay.
made in the back. If not, there'll be a blank check for you
All right.
to name.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Where would you like to sit?
Okay.
Where would you like to sit?
Whitney was hoping we could call her. She'll be here shortly, but
Okay, well, we can be a little flexible. Okay, so I'd like to start as close to on time as possible because I want to honor your time and I want to thank you all for coming. I want to start just by giving you a little story. How many of you have heard the story from Patrick O'Neill? Well, Reverend Patrick O'Neill visited Africa and he visited the Maasai tribe. And when he was visiting the Maasai tribe, which is known to be very fierce warriors, he would have conversations, and in his conversations, he would hear them say, Kasarian and Jera, whenever they were greeting. That means, how are the children? How are the children? So the expected response from tribe members was, and the children are well. So the gist of that story is that when the children are well, the Maasai tribe knows that their future is secured. Their future is secured. So when I was superintendent in the state of Washington, I used to always ask, how are the children? And our intent today is to look at the state of Oregon and the children in Oregon and ask the question, how are the children? So that our expected response, when we get everything we need in place for Oregon, will be, and our children are well. Our children are well. So I'd like to thank you for coming. I'd like to start by introducing staff who are here so far. We have Brett Walker. Brett's new to our department, or to our area, so we're very pleased to have you, Brett. Brett, if you could just introduce yourself and tell them what you are engaged or involved in, or what you think you got yourself into.
Sure. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Walker. Native Oregonian and recently moved back from Boston, Massachusetts, where I was working with Boston Public Schools. My background is primarily in the realm of family engagement. And what I'm going to be working on here with the Early Learning Division is going to be related to some of the work around kindergarten readiness, the Kindergarten Partnership and Innovation Fund that is just being launched, and, as well as some of the early literacy work and some of the community and constituent engagement work that we're doing. So I'm thrilled to be back in Oregon. It's nice to be with you all this morning.
Thank you, Brett, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We'll have a chance to introduce ourselves a bit later. I'd also like to introduce to you Ben Cannon, the Governor's Policy Advisor, Senior Advisor for Education. And Ben will have a few words to say in just a minute. But Ben, if there's anything you want to say to welcome them prior to, there you go.
You'll hear from me in a moment.
Okay, thank you. So I passed out packets to you, and in your packets, you should have the following information. You should have an agenda. You should have a copy of the PowerPoint that will be used during the charge. You should have some research on vocabulary. And then you should have an informational item on Ed Research that says Ed Research Reading Education. So those are the 4 pieces that should be in your packets. And if they're complete, then we can move on. If they're not, just jot me a note and we'll make sure you get the items that you need. I would also like to note that I passed out a business card. Okay, so that was a little laziness on my part, trying to get my fingers to put them all in the folder. Didn't just quite work. So my business card is there that will give you the contact information for getting a hold of me. The agenda itself is set up so that we have an opportunity for, you're welcome to sit right up front if you'd like. You know, it's just like church, right?
It really is.
Yeah. The agenda is set up so that we can have an opportunity to have a discussion about the things that we'd like to have for a statewide reading campaign. So this is going to be not a sit and get, but rather an interactive meeting where you have an opportunity to really give us some input. So our objective is stated on the agenda, and it's actually to get input from our partner organizations on how to have a statewide reading campaign that garners excitement for reading and supports the governor's vision for literacy throughout Oregon communities. So we're very excited that you've taken time out of your schedule to come and be with us and share. The agenda will have Dr. Golden will come in as her schedule accommodates. So we may need to stop when she has an opportunity because she would like to provide some comments to you as well. We have Ben will talk from the governor's office perspective. Then Whitney will come in. Whitney Grubbs, our policy analyst for the Oregon Education Investment Board. She's on her way. She will give you a legislation update so that you have some information about how the statewide reading campaign was formed and what the thinking was behind that. Then I'll talk a bit about the charge to the committee and present some data. And then we'll break into small groups. We'll report back, and then we will basically end with the inspiration of the governor when he talks about his ideas for reading in the state of Oregon. So that's what we intend to accomplish this morning, and again, appreciate your taking the time. Our restrooms are right out the door here, so if you go out and just turn right, go out and you'll see the two signs, men and women. If you turn immediately right, you'll hit a conference room. But if you look toward the drinking fountain, you'll see the restrooms. I hope everyone's parked appropriately because we do have enforcement. So if you need some guidance with where to park, let us know that. The intention today is to have a transparent facilitation. So when I talk about transparent facilitation, that means that I'll be doing some role modeling and then step out of that role and again become the facilitator for the meeting. So with that, I'm going to talk about a model that we're going to be using for our thinking today, and it's called 3-2-1. How many of you have ever been involved in a protocol 3-2-1? Okay, great. This is a great teaching opportunity. So 3-2-1 is a protocol that's used in quite a bit of facilitation. And what I want to get from this will be for you today to make 3 new contacts. 3 new contacts. So it's an opportunity for networking in that regard. I want to have you write on your index cards those 3 contacts that you've made. So one of your index cards will be used for that. Thank you. And then you will have 2 contributions that you feel you can make to this campaign. And so that will go on another index card. And if you could make sure you have your name and contact information on that card so that I will have that to collect. And then the other one will come later. Okay? I'd like to start now by asking Ben if you would make comments from the governor's office.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Well,
you.
thanks, Doris, and thanks everyone for being a part of this. As you know, and you'll hear in the introductions, Doris has reached out, I think very appropriately, to community organizations and partners who are really engaged in this early reading work and have been in some of your cases for some time. And I'll speak more about the significance of that in a minute. Morning, Nancy. From the governor's perspective, so I can't do this nearly as eloquently or powerfully as he. But many of you, I'm sure, have heard him speak to the type of work that we're trying to do up and down the education system to build connections between really powerful outcomes and their impact on our ultimate goal, which is to significantly increase the level of attainment of Oregon's educational attainment of Oregon's students. And early reading is foundational to that, and it's absolutely at the heart of the work. So for the governor, he talks about the connection between kindergarten readiness and third grade reading, the connection between third grade reading and ultimately high school graduation rates, those high school graduation or completion rates, and a student's likelihood to go on to success in post-secondary, in college and career. And early learning and early reading in particular is foundational, is seminal. We know, you all know, how important and how powerful a predictor that is. So that's sort of the larger context for it. What results from that sort of understanding for the governor, what sort of came out of that understanding of the importance of these early benchmarks, early reading in particular, and later outcomes, was intent to work with the investment board and the legislature on investment strategies that were targeted towards key outcomes. And so we brought to the legislature a proposal for a concentrated investment in early reading especially. The discussion that we're having today is about a portion of an overall investment. So the legislature, at the governor's urging, adopted a larger set of multi-million-dollar investment in a host of early reading strategies, many of them in partnership with schools, in partnership with community organizations, to help intensify the work and the support that we're providing to students as they move towards that really key third grade reading benchmark. The notion of a statewide campaign was that this has to be about more than just classroom interventions or even after school interventions. Those are really important. But this is equally about families and their role, about communities and their role. There has to be to reinforce this larger set of early reading interventions, we need a statewide sense of excitement and engagement and understanding of the importance of early reading. And so thus born the idea of a statewide reading campaign. A couple of notes and a couple of sort of things to keep in mind as you move through the discussion today. One is that we're not talking about a lot of money that we've put forward in support of this campaign. And that raises the level of challenge, right? How do you effectively get a message out to hundreds of thousands, potentially, of Oregon families, caregivers, about the importance of early reading effectively on a relatively small sum? And part of the answer to that, and I think a big part of the answer to that, is to leverage the good work, the existing momentum, the investments that partner organizations are making already in this type of activity, so that this investment doesn't happen in isolation. It doesn't happen as sort of yet another sort of message out there in the wilderness, but is harnessed to and reinforces the kinds of things that are already going on in Oregon. And so I think that's something that this group can contribute to our thinking about. And then the second, from the governor's perspective, I think the second real key thing to keep in mind is the equity focus that we have to bring to this work up and down the continuum across the board. With Doris's leadership, the Oregon Education Investment Board Subcommittee on Equity and Partnerships adopted an equity lens that speaks to the type of considerations, the types of questions that we need to ask as we develop policies, whether those are intervention policies or school reform policies or early reading campaign policies, the types of questions that we need to be asking about how our work is reducing educational inequalities, how our work is engaging in meaningful ways diverse communities, how our work is empowering Oregon's marginalized, and that equity lens, which isn't in your packet but is well worth looking at, should be a primary tool that this group and any other group advising this process uses to help sort of filter and help sort of screen the kinds of decisions that we're making. So I think I'll leave it at that. You'll hear or see a video from the governor himself later in the morning, but really appreciate the fact that you're here today and contributing to this. What the governor believes is a really important effort for a small investment can leverage a great deal of excitement and impact around early reading.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks. And our CEO, our new Chief Education Officer, has joined us, Dr. Nancy Golden. So I'll ask her if she would give some comments to you at this time.
Thank you. I'm looking around the room, I'm seeing people I've known or been in meetings with for years who have been so committed to reading and early reading. So I think this is a great moment for all of us where there's an investment in it, and it's our job here to really create excitement about it. So I just retired as the superintendent of Springfield Public Schools. I was there for 10 years. I retired for a weekend, and then I was asked to do this job. And I believe deeply this is a moment in time for all of us in Oregon. We've got a governor who understands key investments. I think understands the right key investments, and so I kind of felt like, how could I not come back and try to be a piece of it? And I think in the same way, you're all trying to be a piece of it, and I'm just so excited to see about what you create together on behalf of all these wonderful children we get to lead and serve on behalf of. When I was in Springfield, we created this thing called the Gift of Literacy, and what it was that we worked with Rotary clubs, lots of different people, but it started with Rotary Club. So for each first grade classroom, we gave 8 books that were chosen by first grade and kindergarten teachers, and kids got to read those 8 books. The teacher read to them, and if they could read them, they'd read them. And then each child got to choose their favorite book, and the whole community came together and made sure there was a label with a hardcover book with a particular child's name. And on one day, we took 1,000 kids up to Lane Community College because we knew we wanted kids to think about reading now means going to college later. And we had celebrities like legislators and football players and Michelle Obama's brother-in-law and the mayors come, and the kids would sit with a backpack. We brought them in 300 at a time, and they would open that backpack, and out would come the book that they had chosen, and then these celebrities would read to them the book. And as they came into the campus, there were characters from the book, so we rented the actual costumes as characters from the book. And it is such a moment in our community of saying reading matters. It matters the second the child is born. We know some people read to their children before they're born, right? We've read about that, but it happens the second a child's born, and if you get that right, the child is on such a pathway to 40-40-20, being college and career ready. So, and what I really found with Gift of Literacy is you start talking about it and the whole community wraps their arms around it. So that's one small example of what we can do together in terms of really creating excitements in communities. And I really think it's even deeper than that. It really galvanizes communities who maybe see things differently. I don't think there's anyone who says that reading isn't important. And that can be a force that brings people together who might not have ever sat around the table together. So, so the task we've asked you to help us achieve is really an extraordinary task. I think it's a really important task. I would, when I had to make a hard decision as a superintendent, sit in a kindergarten classroom, and I saw every possibility in the world in the eyes and the actions of the kids in the kindergarten classroom. I also had a grandson who was a kindergartner last year in one of Springfield's schools, so I was a volunteer in the classroom. And I was there once a week from the very beginning, and I would see kids pick up books and not even know which way was the right way. You've seen that, right? Kids pick it up upside down, which is probably a signal that they didn't have many books in their home. I've seen kids try to read from back to front, and unless you're reading Hebrew, generally you read in the other direction. And I just realized that the difference kids come with can be really, really different, just depending on opportunities they've had or exposures they've had. When I was reading to kids in the kindergarten classrooms, I would say things like, we like to read a lot about Mexico because we had a lot of kids from Mexico. So I'd ask kids if they'd ever been to Mexico. And some kids had and some kids were not. But I could say, right now we're all going to Mexico together. In this book, we're going to get an opportunity to learn about this incredible culture that many of the kids in this class come from. And we could read about Native American. I mean, it's not only reading is important for the trajectory, it's important for creating the kind of cultures we want in our classroom, where every culture is respected and people really understand the beauty and the traditions that they all bring to that little classroom with those 25 kids who hold every possibility. So with that, I just can't wait for you guys to get going, and I'll be driving Doris crazy because I'll call her probably 6 times and say, what did they come up with, and what are the actions. But the last thing I'd want to say is, I think one of the things our governor cares most about is that actions happen in communities. He sits up here in Salem with the ability to help get key policy passed. He has a strong ability to veto a bill if he doesn't like it. But what he really cares about is policies that create actions in the community. And so this, I think, is one of the first examples, since we've all been working on this reform, where we can say we're investing in something important and we're going to get it into the communities, so the communities who really have our children in them can really get the advantage of what we know early learning can do. So thank you so much for volunteering. I'm seeing people who are like incredibly busy people, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Golden. And you can tell that I was a classroom teacher, right? Because I can't sit down. And I'm also just ADD. What can I say? Now, remember the 3-2-1 protocol that I talked about earlier, right? I wanted 3 what? 3 contacts, so for your networking. So that's going to be your own card. And then I wanted 2 what? Contributions that you feel you can make. So what did I want for number 1? I had not shared that. So now is the opportunity to share that, because you're going to introduce yourself, tell how you're affiliated with the reading piece, and then the one thing I'd like to have you write on the back of your name tag, which I will collect because it will also be my way of keeping track of who's here. I'd like for you to write down your favorite children's book. Your favorite children's book. Okay? So if you could do that, take just a minute to do that, and then we'll start. You may have a new page on the back page, and if not, there's someone perfect. 5.
Just one?
I know, that's the hardest thing for me too, because there are so many. But just do the first one that comes to your mind if you have like many. Okay, so I'm going to start. I'm Doris McEwen. I'm the Deputy Director for Curriculum and Instruction with the Oregon Education Investment Board, affectionately called OEIB. I have a strong passion for ensuring that every child is successful. Every child is successful. I know that we know how to do that as an education and as a community, education community, and as our community at large. And I also know that we can't do that without the involvement of our communities. So that's my passion. I have many favorite children's books, but the one I'm going to just tell you about today, not about the book, but the title is "Oh, the Places They Will Go." "Oh, the Places You Will Go," by Dr. Seuss. "Oh, the Places You Will Go." So with that, Nancy, do you want to go next?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, I'm a Dr. Seuss person too, and my favorite book is The Cat in the Hat, and I can recite it. So, And, you know, my passion really is, one of them is early reading, because I know the difference it makes for children.
Ben Cannon, I have a daughter going into first grade, and so I was tempted to put here Ramona the Pest, because we were reading it last night, and just to see her recognizing herself in that story and just laughing. I mean, both of us. I mean, I almost couldn't finish a page. We were both laughing together. I put Winnie the Pooh because that is probably my very favorite.
Thanks, Ben.
Good morning. I'm Brian Miyagishima, librarian from Lynn Benton Community College. I was asked by my friend and colleague, Michelle Burke, who is president of the Oregon Library Association, to attend in her stead. I wrote down James and the Giant Peach for my favorite children's book.
Thank you.
And I've got a real passion for education. So far, I've managed to work in just about all levels, from middle school to high school to graduate teaching, and now at the community college level.
Great. Thank you. Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Samuels from Reading Results. We're a nonprofit organization in Portland. We work with primarily Title I schools to provide an intensive reading intervention program for first and second graders to make gains toward third grade reading success. And I wrote down Bread and Jam for Francis.
Well, I'm Brett again. Already introduced myself. My favorite book, I kind of cheated. I wrote down the Magic Treehouse series, which is like 50 books. But
Thank you.
I'm Amy Potter, and I'm the program director for Reading Results. And I have 3 sons. One is going into second grade. I had to put down 2 books. My other 2 are 18-month-old twins. And so for the babies, our favorite book right now is Busy Toes, especially like the dancing. And the other one that I'm reading with my oldest right now is Wonder, which has come out pretty recently, and that's been a great book for my son and I to talk about how to. It's just a great book to read right before going to school. It's been rocking me very much.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Hi, I'm Margie Rosenthal, one of the co-founders of what's now Reading Results, used to be Portland Reading Foundation, and I'm recently retired and on the board of the organization, but I'm interested in being involved in this process. And the book I put down is called How Rocket Learned to Read. It's a wonderful.
Hi, good morning. I'm Abby Bush with the Oregon Community Foundation. We have a long history of supporting the early literacy efforts. And my favorite book that I'm happy to revisit with my 3.5-year-old are the Frog and Toad books.
Hi, I'm Shannon Taylor. I'm with the Oregon Association of Student Councils, and I put down the Wild Things.
So let me just stop and say that we can't have community voice without student voice. So I am so excited to have students here today. So thank you so much for coming, both of you.
I'm Tyler Gunning. I also represent the Oregon Association of Student Councils. I'm the site representative for that. And I put down all the places you go. Also.
I'm Suzanne Dalton, and I'm from CUSA, which is the Confederation of Oregon School Administrators. And at a time in my career when I was a high school principal, so I think that's when I was attracted to studying student leaders. And I also was an elementary principal. As an elementary principal, each fall I identified a book I would read to my staff, and then we would invite them to classrooms to read the same book. And that favorite book was called Book. And then each year it was a different book. Lots of joy.
I'm Megan Holstead of the Oregon School Boards Association. My favorite book's Winnie the Pooh. My background, I taught middle school and high school, so I understand the struggles when the reading skills are not there. But I also was an elementary principal. I also was the director of Title I, ELL, migrant and students. So hopefully I can bring my 38 years of education experience into this community.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dawn Woods, and I'm with the Early Learning Division, the Office of Child Care. And so I work within the Quality Improvement Unit, so looking at a lot of child care facilities, partnering with Head Start to create those quality early learning environments. My favorite book is It, back when I was a preschool teacher, because it really provided those opportunities for kids to have a conversation about it, wonder if, and then create a great dialogue.
I'm Susan Cameron. I'm the state president of Oregon PTA. Our mission is the health and wellness of children and parenting, family engagement. My favorite children's book is James and the Giant Peach.
Good morning, I'm Swati Darkar. I'm the president of the Children's Institute. We're a statewide research and policy organization focused on birth to 8 years. And so, very, very excited about thinking about how this initiative could fit in the governor's broad vision of system reform. So, we just wanted to mention that we had a wonderful opportunity to be part of a national campaign called a Campaign for Grade Level Reading, which is very aligned with a lot of the things that are on the table in the governor's vision. And he stole the show at the launch of the national campaign at the Press Club in DC. His vision was really what this national campaign is about. So it's pretty exciting to have a leader of our state be seen as the sort of beacon for what's, I think, really a national movement. So we'd love to share that at some point. My favorite children's book, it's very hard to say, is called Make Way for Darkness.
Good morning, I'm Chris Otis. I'm with SMART, Start Making a Reader Today. I'm the executive director, and I always like to say I am a smart reader also. We're a statewide, not-for-profit, volunteer-based program that is supporting children through one-on-one interaction with reading. It's sort of around the soft skills of reading, building confidence, giving practice time, really opening kids up to the joy and excitement of reading. We've worked for 20 years around the state in partnership with public schools, which is where our work takes place. This year we'll serve probably 9,000 kids, and the work gets done because we have probably 5,500 volunteers who will help us do that work. So we're really excited to be engaged in this work. Love the comments about the governor's driving force around the actions that really happen in the community, because that's certainly where we live. And I am exposed to a lot of kids' books, as you might imagine, including Dr. Seuss or the Pinkalicious, which is what my reader kids wanted to read, but The Velveteen Rabbit is my personal favorite.
Hello, I'm Karen Moskin, and I'm a reading specialist from the Office of Learning at the Oregon Department of Education. And I'm a recent newcomer to Oregon. I came from Idaho, where I was part of the Open Book Initiative through the Albertson Foundation. So, very happy to be here. I chose a book that my 3-year-old grandson has memorized, so I can't ever skip a page or a word, or he corrects me. And that book is The Pigeon Finds a Hot Dog.
Good morning, my name is Ken Hermans. I am the Language Arts Assessment Specialist for the Department of Education. So this third grade test, that reading test that we want all the students to pass, is one that I work intimately with and have for about 16 years. One of my first jobs at the department was actually, we were developing a series of videotapes to show young students reading, to get across the importance of fluency. And my daughter was in the 2nd grade at the time. And so one of the earliest videotapes I have of my daughter, in addition to the ones the family did, is of her reading a book that went around the videotape, went around the state to show students reading, fluent readers. So kind of nice to have that archive of her early reading success. My favorite children's book is probably Charlotte's Web. A little bit older, but still.
I'm Derek Brown. I'm also from the assessment office at the Department of Education. I manage the assessment of essential skills. And I'm mostly interested in this, not only from the Department of Education standpoint, but also as a parent of a 4 and 6-year-old. And I was thinking about Fox and Socks as my favorite book, mostly because I like to listen to my daughter laugh as we read that together, as I get tongue-tied and she gets tongue-tied. But I was also thinking last night when I got home from work, my 4-year-old son walked up to me and said, it's really important that you be brave, unselfish, and truthful. And so, which I had a similar response, and then realized that the storybook version of Pinocchio has become, is now a favorite as well.
I'm Crystal Breen, I'm the Communications Director for the Department of Education. And I've been involved there for about 8 years. And I also picked Winnie the Pooh. It was a constant read in my household for many, many, many years.
Thank you. I'm Brenda Kamaine. I'm a reading specialist in the Bethel District in Eugene. And I'm the grandmother of a former 3-year-old where I got hooked on To Market and a current 3-year-old.
I'm Tammy Kerr with Agriculture in the Classroom. We're a nonprofit organization housed on campus in Corvallis at Oregon State. We currently do have a literacy project, a statewide program, and we've completed 6 years now of that. We work a lot with high school FFA students, so very grassroots, very rural, a lot of retired teachers also. And my current favorite was our literacy book from last year. It's called Who Grew My Soup? It's beautifully illustrated, it's engaging and really funny, and we're all about where your food comes from, and that's exactly the message of the book. And little Phineas Quinn is a lot of fun to read about. Thank you.
I'm Heidi McGowan. I'm a consultant and I work with the Early Learning Division. I have predominantly worked with actually many folks, but with Dawn regarding many of the quality improvement initiatives, but specifically as project manager for Race to the Top, which dovetails into some of the focus areas of this work. The book that I chose, my daughters are now substantially old, it feels like. They're 18 and 21, and so we don't read children's books anymore. But I have such fond memories of reading Goodnight Moon, going to bed. Those days are gone.
Or beginning again soon.
My name is Krista Rood. I work with the Early Learning Division and the Head Start Collaboration Project. I am excited about a lot of the new reading initiatives coming out of Head Start, specifically a planned language approach, and the research that even when babies are in utero, they're making distinctions between sounds. I mean, it's amazing stuff. So exciting times, and happy to be a part of this. My favorite book is Miss Rumphius by Barbara Cooney, about everyone's opportunity to make the world a more beautiful place.
My name is Mary Kay Dahlgreen. I'm the director of the State Library, which is right across the street there. You should visit sometime. It's a beautiful building. The State Library has essentially 3 tasks. We work with state agency staff, we work with blind and physically handicapped, and we also work with all of the libraries in the state. So the reason I'm here is because there are 128 public libraries, so we're really down and dirty in the community. And one of the things that the general fund funds is what we call the Ready to Read grant. And I've been a children's librarian until I had to grow up. And my favorite children's book is Lily's Purple Plastic Purse by Kevin Hankus.
Great. Well, thank you all. Did you feel the energy? I mean, how you lit up when you talked about the books that were most favorite to you? And that's the same thing that we want for all children in the state of Oregon. And we know that there is a disparity in terms of the opportunities for children to have access to books. We're hoping that the launching of a statewide reading campaign will mobilize communities to really key in on what we know is most important to their success in life, and that's reading. We're going to go ahead. Whitney's not here yet, but when she comes in, we'll give her an opportunity to share with you the information behind the legislation. And Ben, I know that you may or may not be able to stay for the meeting, and we so appreciate your being here for the time that you can be here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the charge. So when we think about the statewide reading campaign, I talked about Kassarian and Jera. How are the children? So the question that I'd like to ask you to constantly keep in your mind today is, how are the children? How are the children? And how are we going to get to the point where when we ask that question of each other, our responses, and our children in Oregon are well. Our children are well. This is an ad hoc committee. Ad hoc meaning you're not going to be meeting over and over and over and over. We're asking you for your input today. We're not asking you for continued meetings. However, you're always welcome to give continued input. We welcome that. But it is an ad hoc committee. So today what I'd like to be able to do is to have us brainstorm and share ideas. Some of the things that you have been working on in your organizations are very, very relevant to what we need to think about as we forge a statewide reading campaign. It's not a recommending body. And Amy, I'm sorry, I forgot to indicate that you're on the line. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was just typing an email to let everyone know that I'm on the line, and sounds like a great group around the table. And I'm not sure if everyone's familiar or if I've met you before, but just in case, I should introduce myself as Amy Johnson. I'm the Director of Building Healthy Families. We are a nonprofit organization committed to supporting families in education and service programs. We led the way here in Wallowa County in the development of a CSAP, a community action plan around third grade reading. And we're honored to be selected as one of the finalists at the All-American Cities Awards last July. We have hosted Ralph Smith and Swati here in Wallowa County in the last few weeks to see how our communities pulled together around third grade reading. So I look forward to contributing to this conversation. And Dr. Seuss is one of my favorites. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish.
Thank you, Amy, and thanks so much for joining us. Amy was being frugal. She is so far away from us, but wanted to be involved in the conversation. So thank you again, Amy. And the group that we have you work with, we'll just put up here near the speakers so that you can be involved in the small group work as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Is there anyone else on the line? Okay, I'm glad I looked down and saw it lit up. So thank you again, Amy. So we're not a recommending body. It is an ad hoc committee. But what we are asking is, how do we make this the real deal in our local communities? How do we get people excited? And we have a really short timeline. So we're looking at launching this by October of this year, of 2013. So with that, before I go into the why and connecting the disconnect, Whitney has had an opportunity to join us. So I'm going to ask her if she will give you the information about the legislation and make any comments that she thinks are appropriate for you to hear, and then I'll get back to the why and connecting the disconnect.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doris. I'm Whitney Grubbs. I'm Policy Advisor for the OEIB. I very much apologize for not being here at the beginning. If this meeting were occurring next Thursday, I would have been right on time, but somehow my calendar failed me this morning. I think maybe it was user error, but anyway, it's great to be here. It's so wonderful to have all of you here to lend your voices. I was thinking on my barreling down the freeway this morning about sort of how this idea got started, and really it was many folks like Swati had talked to me about third grade reading campaigns, and we'd sort of like mulled around this idea. But it was really this conversation that happened when Rudy Crew was here, really as he began to talk to us a lot about, what are the artifacts that children and families in our state would see that would let them know that the things that we're working on are important. And we started talking about the fact that there's this incredible lack of artifacts. I mean, there's efforts that are going on in some parts of the community, but there is not the kind of there's not a sort of a constant stream of information and artifacts and visible things that allow families to really know why early literacy is important, or what it is that we can be doing to get our children ready to read and on track to being third grade readers. And so we started talking about it in terms of this kind of campaign idea. And as most of you know, and I apologize because I hope I'm not repeating what Ben talked about. He and I tend to say the same things in our comments, but really this is part of kind of this larger strategy around an Oregon reading initiative that we moved forward this last legislative session. So as part of one of the governor's key strategies, we spent some time last summer, actually a month or more, really examining what are those levers in outcomes across the continuum that we should be focusing on, and then what are the strategies that we think are really going to move the dial across the state. And from that, we developed a package of recommended investments that we took to the legislature, and they're around the areas of early reading, kind of middle grade support, and on track for graduation with our kind of middle and early high school students, and then some initiatives about connecting to the world of work, so some investment in STEM and investment in that transition into college and into the workforce. So with the early reading set of investments, what we ended up getting was, I'll try to do it off the top of my head, I think it was about, I bet Crystal knows, about $7 million. And those are kind of packaged in a set of different strategies that we'll be rolling out with the help of the Early Learning Council and with the help of the Oregon Department of Education. And some of those fundings will go to purchase materials and supplies. Some will go to sort of train teachers and early educators. Some will go out to support strategies of engaging families, connecting libraries with families, and doing a bunch of different strategies around reading. And so through those investments, we're going to actually be able to create, I think, some significant action around the state and really build upon much of the wonderful work that's been happening. And this piece of it is so small, but I think it's really critical and powerful, and this is really where the OEIB comes into play. So this reading campaign is a small amount of money, but the idea is to really create the connection between the different strategies we're using, and then really just to build the awareness, to be able to use the governor's presence, to be able to use Dr. Golden and her passion and energy, to be able to use community leaders like yourselves, and then to be able to use kind of a grassroots network on the ground to really build a kind of comprehensive strategy for keeping this visible and helping people to understand why it's important and how it's working. So that's sort of how I envision it, and I think mostly I just welcome everybody's energy and really sort of creative thinking around it. I'm not sure if you mentioned anything about how we're working on the other investments, or
No, we have not.
So we'll. I'm working with Jada Rupley, and Jada's not here, right? No.
But she's represented.
Oh, you folks are here, and Krista and Heidi, Megan Irwin. We're all kind of working together we'll be doing a work group in the next few weeks. Will not so much be a stakeholder work group, because when we move to the level of talking about what criteria we want in RFPs, we can't have folks in the room that would ultimately then apply for the RFP. But we will be having an advisory group come together to talk about what those strategies, or how those RFPs will roll out, and what will be in them, and what criteria we want to put in place. And so this conversation really will also help inform us of your thinking in a kind of indirect way about how to roll out the sort of more direct service strategic initiatives that we're working on. So
Thank you. Thank you, Whitney, so much. So we're going to talk just a bit about the why, and not spend a lot of time, because I really want to get you into conversation. So we know there's a disconnect when we are considered to be 42nd in this country in terms of our achievement in education, we know there's a disconnect. And we believe that some of that disconnect is because of the disparate or desperate circumstances of our children across the state, and reading is one of those areas. So I'm going to give you some information that really is from the back end forward. If you look at the graph here, you'll see that the 3-year graduation rate for at 2-year colleges, and it's disaggregated by race. So if you take a look at this, you'll see that there's a significant difference in the achievement of, we know that nationally we're not doing that well. We know that Oregon, we're doing less well. But when we disaggregate it by race, we see that it's abhorrent to think that less than a third of our students graduate from our 2-year colleges in a 3-year period. I can give you similar data for 4-year colleges, but we have a goal in Oregon, and people talk about the governor's vision, This is Oregon's vision. And so each one of us have to embrace it individually in order for it to really come to fruition. And that vision is that 100% of our students in Oregon will graduate from high school by 2025. And that's doable. It's doable. 40% of them will go on to community colleges, 2-year colleges, degree programs, associate degree programs. 40% will obtain at least a baccalaureate degree. 20% will probably enter directly into the workforce, but 100% of them will be graduated. So our responsibility then is to look at how do we personally impact that. And we believe that reading is one of the ways of doing it. We have similar results when we look at 3rd grade reading, for example, in the state. And this is also disaggregated by race, as well as by English language learners and students with disabilities. And you'll see that we have a long way to go, but the long way to go does not mean that it's not doable. And so our responsibility then is to put together a plan for that to happen. And when I said I was going from going backwards, we began with the fact that we have 270,000 0 to 5-year-olds in Oregon, and 40% of them are at risk. And when I don't like the term at risk, so I always say 40% of them the system has put at risk in some way. And so our responsibility, our opportunity is to mitigate that.
Doris, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
How, just out of curiosity, how are we defining a student at risk, or that the system has put at risk?
There are several factors. If we look at Edelman and Taylor's work out of California, there are several environmental factors, there are personal factors that are listed that put students at risk. Some of them have to do with poverty levels, some of them have to, actually I'll send that to you, Jennifer, because I didn't have that on that slide to go through for you. We know that vocabulary is huge in a child's life, right? For example, if we talk about what puts the students at risk, the access to books, the access to vocabulary is a way that students are put at risk. In a typical hour, the average child in below poverty situation hears about 616 words. Working class, about 1,251 words. Professionals, about 2,150 words. So this is research by Hart and Riesler. That's the quantity of words. Let's look at the quality of words. In a typical hour, students in poverty, 32, below the poverty level, 32 affirmations, 5 prohibitions. Actually, this is wrong. It's the reverse. So I typed it in wrong. Sorry. It should say professionals, 32 affirmations, 5 prohibitions. Working class, got that one right. Happens to be in the middle. But when we are in situations where students are below the poverty level, 5 affirmations to 11 prohibitions. That means negative words being said to children on a consistent basis. And so what they hear in their minds and in their vocabulary is that negative. And so we have an opportunity to build children up. And reading, as excited as you got about your children's book, that's how excited we can get children about reading. And that's our goal. That's our ultimate goal. I apologize for that. I'll change that slide. Reading helps us get from chaos to order. Reading helps us get there. When I looked at reading in other states, you know, there are a lot of state initiatives, and I'm going to call off some to you just so you hear them. But I want us to think about something more than the glitz. It has to be connected, it has to be aligned, and it has to move our children forward. Alabama, for example, has an Alabama Reads. Arizona, Read on Arizona. Canada has a nationwide reading program. What did you read today? Florida, just read Florida. Illinois reads, read Kansas read. It's on and on and on. So there are a lot of statewide initiatives, but the key is, where do we target? Where do we target? What's our strategy? We know that students who are successful are students who read on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. Research tells us that. It's very clear. So working to get us there that's our goal. That's our ultimate goal. Again, I want to thank our students for being here because your voices are so critical to this. I'm going to encourage you to not pretend, but just not think about the age difference in the groups you're going to be assigned. Speak up anyway, okay? Just bring your voice to the conversation. I'd like to divide us into groups so that we can have the conversation, and this is what I'd like to have you look at. How do we create a statewide campaign that builds awareness and shared responsibilities throughout communities? And so I'd like for you to share what you've done. I'd like for you to brainstorm ideas, select 3 that you're going to share with a large group, and then what will be your next steps in building a reading community. Okay, so any questions on what I'm asking? Okay, I'd like to have you count off by 6s. Again, that's the teacher in me. So we'll start down, I can't see the name. That's the age thing going on right now. So Dawn, we're going to start with Dawn, and I'm trying to intentionally break up you if you are in a group where you know or work with that particular colleague, okay? So Dawn, if you would start.
1, 2, I'll put Suzanne as 3.
Okay.
4, 5, 6, 1, 2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
1,
2, 3, 4, 5,
6.
1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6.
I don't believe it.
Wow, that was fantastic.
The universe is with us today. So I'm going to pass out to you. Oh, Amy, are you still there?
With you today, right?
You're going to be with group 1, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Okay, and I'm going to ask group 1 if you'll convene near the front of the room here so that Amy can be involved in your conversation. And then I'm going to pass the instructions again out to you. I'm going to say that wherever in the room is most comfortable for you, feel free to divide any place you need to in this room. Circle chairs, whatever you need to do that. Does any group need to switch? Are you with colleagues that you work with on a daily basis? Did we get that worked out pretty well? Okay. Any questions about what I need to have you do? Okay.
What's the amount of time associated?
Thank you. We're going to have 20 minutes for you to have your conversation. I'll check in 20 minutes and see where you are to see if we're ready for a report out. I would like for you to Tell me your name again.
Chris.
Chris, thank you. Because I would also like for you to select someone that's going to be a spokesperson for you. It's just that I know you've done these groups so many times until some of that is just second nature for you. So thank you for the reminder. So 20 minutes, wherever you'd like to in the room. I'll kind of keep track of that. And then we'll come up with the best campaign in the country. Okay? All right. Wherever you'd like to sit.
I want to apologize. I don't know how my life has been so freaking disorganized, but it wasn't so bad. Called me and asked me what I was going to say this morning. I was like, oh, it's next week. He's like, no, it's not. It's this morning. Anyway, I'm here now.
We all covered it, so it's just fine.
Okay.
We need to be up here by the phone.
Okay, you have your instructions there if you need it. Which group is this? Five.
We're in the mic.
Where are my sixes?
Amy, can you hear us?
I think she's on.
Oh,
Amy?
Yeah.
oh, there she is. Amy, what's your last name?
Me too, but I'll go with you. You don't want me to take it. Where are you?
Amy, can you hear me?
And Amy Johnson.
Oh, Amy Johnson. Okay. The reason I asked is I want to write you down as a contact. Wallowa County's my home area, my hometown.
Wallowa or Wallowa or Enterprise?
I grew up in Wallowa, graduated from Wallowa High School. Derek Brown.
Derek. Derek, I know you.
Yeah, I do. Everybody called me DJ back in those days.
No, that's right.
Really? What a small world.
It is a small world. Well,
so exciting.
Yes.
Made my day.
Well, I'm going to find your contact information, or email address, so you and I can stay connected.
Are you a 4? I'm a 4. There's another 4 there in the back.
Margie.
I'm Derek.
Hi, Derek. Margie. Hi, Amy. Hi, Margie.
Just the four of us, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh,
no, Dawn.
More. Dawn's coming. Okay. Dawn.
So, Amy, just so you know, we have Dawn and Derek and Mary Kay and Margie.
Football camp at Boise State in high school. It was about this time of year. So we were actively drafted.
Yeah, it'll be tough to hear her, I think. Or for her to hear us.
That doesn't help.
And I didn't bring my list of what we're supposed to do. So so you're in charge.
It's right there, actually.
Okay.
Right.
I moved all your stuff. I hope that's okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so we're supposed to share what we've done and then brainstorm some ideas about this statewide reading campaign.
So I'm from the new Office of Child Care that's been created within the Early Learning Division. I've seen your name many times before, Mary Kay. I used to be Dawn Norris. I don't know if that rings
it does.
a bell.
It does.
More so, yeah. And so a lot of the work that we have done in the past around literacy is we have a professional development system for early childhood educators. And so we've got a lot of standardized training available out there. We've actually worked in partnerships with the libraries about, connecting some of those trainers with the libraries to train child care providers on quality literacy activities that they can do whether they're a family child care provider or a child care provider, how they build that into their programs. I think additionally, just in general, the child care resource and referrals, we contract with them across the state. They provide a lot of training to the field as well, the early childhood workforce around literacy, just depending, they get like, Multnomah County is very big in Mother Goose. They have a lot of initiatives around that and receive some additional funding from foundations. So, we've got some standardized training as well as some uniqueness to a community that happens out there for the workforce. I think also the child care resource and referral that we contract with also provides information to families, and it's a vehicle potentially to help share information and some kind of campaign as families are calling to find child care, working families. So kind of in a nutshell, those are the places I see some of the literacy pieces that we connected at the early childhood level. Additionally, there is a school age component for before and after school care that also is the one that we do, and that we have a standardized afterwards. It's called curriculum for after school providers that they take. Some are in school, as you guys know, some are in family child care for school age kids. So it kind of runs that gamut as well.
I'll go pretty fast because I know we don't have a lot of time to generate our 3 best ideas on this. My perspective on it is coming from the Department of Ed, and my work mostly focuses on high school graduation requirements and measurement. So I would say the way that connects to this work, it would be in terms of making sure that we would be establishing the key metrics that we would be looking at as part of a statewide campaign, so that we can understand, in those early stages and middle and later stages, what the trajectory looks like for kids. Obviously, a lot of emphasis on the earlier learning component of that and making that happen at the foundational level, but establishing key metrics and understanding how we're going to measure success and where we can improve things.
I'm Margie Rosenthal, and I'm involved with reading results. It used to be called Portland Reading Foundation. We provide an intensive reading intervention program at the elementary school level with children who are struggling with learning to read. Some of them have learning disabilities, some of them are perfectly without any problem, but just haven't gotten it on their own. We work either one-on-one or one-on-two with the students that we're tutoring. And we use retired teachers with the older children that we work with, and at the very primary level, kindergarten, first grade, we train parents from within the school community to work with the children. So where we might connect is on what we're using to train those parents, which is a very intensive kind of program. It's phonics-based, it's explicit, direct instruction, multisensory, and we look at what does the child already know, and then we build very, very, very slowly on what they know, a lot of repetition, a lot of positive reinforcement, and the interesting thing about our program in comparison to a lot of other programs that are out there is that our people get paid for their work. They see the kids 3 times a week for 30 minutes a session, and most of the tutors see somewhere between 4 and 8 children over the course of the days they're there. So it's very intensive, and it complements what's going on in the classroom.
I'm Mary Kay Dahlgren. I work at the State Library across the way there, and I think that libraries do a lot of stuff that has to do with reading. Oh, that's right, libraries.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, libraries. So I spoke really briefly about the Ready to Read grant program, but it's a small amount of money. It's about $750,000 a a year, and that's available to every public library in the state. And they have to use it for either early literacy or for summer reading programs, because that's kind of, I mean, libraries really are part of the community, but one of the things that we believe is that the two things that libraries do that nobody else can do are really that make available to everybody the early literacy piece and the summer reading programs, because we don't have, we don't have any means testing or anything like that. So we get a lot of kids for our summer reading program. We do that as a statewide summer reading program, which actually is also a nationwide summer reading program. And that, to me, that's kind of a really good spot for bringing the word out. Also, we do early literacy training. As a matter of fact, we have a curriculum called Every Child Ready to Read, and it was evidence-based, and it came out of the American Library Association. And we did a training over the course of 3 years with some foundation funding to train somebody from each of the libraries, and also somebody from the Healthy Start people. So we've got quite a cadre of people out there trained, and then also we had some extra money, so we decided to do another training, and we had 20 spots, and we had 40 people apply for it. So I think that, to me, that's a really key piece, because if we don't do the training piece for the parents, then they're going to end up with the kind of issues that the interventions have to do them. So, and the library, it's just hard. I mean, it just makes so much sense.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Amy, did you want to share anything with us?
Yes, I would. As you may have heard when I did my brief introduction, we have led, Building Healthy Families has led the development of a community action plan around third grade reading. And that action plan was comprehensive around school readiness, school attendance, and summer learning loss. What we did a little bit different or unique, but we very much engaged our medical community in that plan, and we are implementing right now with a great deal of success. In each clinic and in the hospital, setting up children's libraries or children's station that included a library, and offering not only books for families, but those tools on how to use those books in an age-appropriate fashion.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Howard County is amazing in its early literacy activities. They have been I've been at the state library for 18 years, and as long as I've been there, there's been all sorts of wonderful things going on in Wallowa County. We could learn a lot from you, Amy.
So whatever community you were in, see this.
So brainstorming ideas. I'm just looking at.
Yeah, I mean, so there were a couple of common themes that I heard there. Maybe we can figure out a way to kind of theme up what our common thinking was there. I think it had to do with parental training was one that I heard, and we might be able to find better words to describe it, but making sure that as part of a larger campaign, we're talking specifically about how to engage with parents about how they can help participate and own this work. And part of that, it seems to me like, is a communication plan that helps make sure that there's a great awareness of the resources that are available. Amy mentioned things. Everybody mentioned resources that I'm not aware of. And we probably could go around the room and do that for days and days. So, just a really clear, succinct, well-integrated communication plan so that if you're engaging with a parent at the community level on something like this, they understand here are the resources that are available for me, and here's how I can use them.
One of the things that we found, this is Margie with Reading Results, one of the things that we found is that there's a lot of retired teachers out there who are willing, even if they're not paid, to do work involved with literacy with kids. And once you've been a teacher, you really miss that interaction with kids, and so I think mobilizing retired teachers from the community to help with training parents is something that we could really think about. I don't exactly know what we would do, but when I talk to retired teachers who are potential reading specialists for us, they all say, well, I don't want to be back in the classroom, but I really want to engage with kids. And being a volunteer smart reader doesn't do it enough for them. Some of them are happy to do that, but they really want to teach. So teaching parents, teaching kids, so engaging retired teachers seems to me.
It seems like that falls in nicely with the comments Ben made about creating community excitement. I think these are the words kind of phrase or excitement as part of this campaign. So mobile, you said that the idea was your children.
And I think if you think about it in that continuum, because I heard, this is Dawn, thinking about it in that continuum. So we know those, 0 to 5, that early literacy is critical, and we have to do interventions later. But what we can, address and get that excitement, that reading, it even provides those mechanisms to have more positive interactions. When a young mom who may be stressed and struggling is able to read, that's a positive versus be quiet, sit down just a minute. Those things that typically a stressed parent might say. So I think if you think about any kind of campaign, it needs to be across those continuums, because wherever along that child's path we can intervene, we want to do so. So I think it's looking at it from the whole complete P20, as the governor talks about, that any kind of communication should incorporate that entire range. And I think what I heard was a lot of different venues of which to get that message out.
Right.
I mean, and from my lens of the child care, we know that 80% of all children will touch the paid child care system by the time they're 5. So having child care providers, read to making sure that they have good literacy activities in their programs, but they're also creating credible relationships with families that they can also support that campaign as well. So when you're looking at that 0 to 5, I think there's some delivery, whatever the messaging is, that's a delivery mechanism for those families as well.
Yeah, that's really good.
Well, and one of the things that worries me is that there's going to be all this focus on the 0 to 5, but what we know through research is that somewhere between 5 and 8% of kids have trouble learning to read, even if they're given all that stuff. So it doesn't matter what kind of economic background they come from, and then you add economic issues and issues of poverty and second language and all of that, and even with a good head start and whatever, you're going to have a percentage of children who are not going to get it easily. And so to me, we have to look at what is the state going to provide for those kids.
I've got one, my son, LD.
Right, and so, and that's where our sweet spot is there's, in every classroom, there's 1 or 2 of those kids who just aren't getting it, and they aren't even getting it in small group instruction. So I'm constantly hoping that all the money doesn't get thrown into the early, and not some left over for those kids who even in the early don't get it. So that's a concern of mine, and letting schools and parents know that there is help out there, both for those who can afford to pay for it and then in Title I schools. And I don't know how we do that. That's a concern of mine.
I would be really curious. I know that there's been a lot of these reading campaigns in other states, and I'd be really curious. I mean, I know we like to do things differently here, but if something's worked in another state, why are we recreating? Why are we recreating the wheel here? It seems like, I know that, we've got people who've been from other states, but it just seems like we're kind of saying, what we're saying is we need to have a campaign, but we don't know, we don't know what's been effective, we don't know. mean, that's what I'm a little concerned about.
Sure.
And it seems like we should pretty easily be able to find out from other states, what's worked and what hasn't worked. And then, bringing in that kind of making it broad without being so broad that nobody pays attention. I mean, that's kind of what I worry about is and I also think that there's the situation with if you read to your child when they're little, they'll love to read. Well, you're right, that's not true. I have a grandson who's 23, bless his little heart, and he's taking remedial reading at college, and they're making him read the Crucible. I'm like, what am I thinking? Anyway, so that was my little rant. So that's kind of what I'm concerned about. Is more than just.
Well, and when I hear you speak, I know that a lot of times when there's campaigns, you have universal approaches, which is kind of broad-based. You have targeted, and then the intensive, and they're all necessary.
Yes,
because what you can't prevent. I can't prevent my son's dyslexic. He has trouble reading. He's on an IEP against intensive help. Professional mom who read to him. I mean, those. It's him.
Seems like that might fit into a multi-layered broad spectrum. You talked about that spectrum, and then maybe there are some different tiers even within the spectrum. Yeah.
In order to be effective and really, because you want the broad base. There are things you can do to prevent, but then there is the need for direct instruction and identifying where those touch points are as well and what those needs are.
Right, and you were able to recognize that in your son because you have the background to recognize it. But if you're from a Latino family where you think this, one of the things that the parents that we've trained, because many of them are Latino in the schools we're in, they said, well, we didn't think we were responsible for the education. We know we're supposed to feed them and clean them and keep them well, dressed, but not teach them. That's the school's job. And so getting that message across, and then the other thing we hear from parents is, well, I don't have the skills, so I'm afraid that I'm doing something, if I'm teaching them what I know in Spanish, that's not going to help them in the classroom. And so we're trying to help, we do these literacy nights where we provide food and then the parents come. And this is something I mean, we've had real success with this. If there's food, they come. And so, and at these literacy nights, we hand out games that are early reading games, and they're just simple paper bag kinds of things that they can take home, and we give them ideas about how to play these games, whether you play them in Spanish or in French or in whatever language, that the child gets that going. So some kind of school-based family.
And I think the family thing is really, really important. I mean, I think that, we've done some, when I was a children's librarian, we did some of those, we did some training with a program called Mother Goose Asks Why. And we would bring together the kids and the parents, and the kids would go one place and the parents would go another place, and that just didn't work. It just didn't work at all. The food was absolutely essential. So I think that, and I agree with you that I think that there's something family-based rather than, I guess what I'm picturing is like billboards and brochures and stuff like that. And I think that people get brochured and billboarded to death. So rather than doing something like that, I mean, maybe something that would facilitate a community literacy, so that it would be, rather than, I don't know.
Well, and I mean, I think to your point as well is there's a real belief of a lot of Latino families when they come in that they don't want their child to learn their language, and especially for young children, that importance of home language and getting that message out about concept development and that literacy piece is huge. I mean, you look at those triangles and it's like you just pull out this whole area for a child when you don't have their home language addressed. And so I think thinking in any kind of campaign around reading and literacy that it goes to that target, maybe that's where those targeted approaches come in with specific groups.
Right, when we've done the family literacy nights, we have translators, Russian, Spanish, whatever we see the community needs, and then and we encourage them to do the reading in their own language, because it does transfer over for most of them, and not to be afraid to do it.
But there just culturally there is, and so continuing to promote that is, and for them to understand that you are doing even English literacy if you're doing it in your home language. Because that's just not a knowledge base out there for a lot of families.
Can you hear us, Amy?
You should be, you should have your 3 ideas.
Amy, do you have anything to add?
At this point, if you could take a piece of chart paper and chart your ideas, that would be really helpful. So someone from your group come and get some chart paper. Try to pick the one that has the sticky on it.
So I think we've talked about communication planning is really important. So I mean, a statewide campaign needs to have a really clear, well thought out communication plan behind it that addresses the spectrum and target audience.
So do we have to rate? I don't know. We're trying to test. I'm not going to start writing until.
Oh, sorry. Amy, go ahead. Sorry, I got a little loud here. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was thinking while I was listening to this conversation, and I don't know if we need but our Oregon Parent Education Collaborative have developed short snippets, and 5 of them. We're going to do 5 of them in total. But those short snippets can be placed in waiting rooms, in health departments, medical communities, wherever they are. Now you see a lot of screens, which I'm not advocating for, but there are screens set in those waiting rooms, educational sort of videos playing frequently, and our video happens to be around school readiness. That really is very effective. As I was in public health in Malheur County yesterday, and a family was listening to a little video about where they can access services around immunization. So I'm wondering, we're trying to think out of the box, if we couldn't use some sort of educational tool that could be provided to public health, medical communities, and even schools that utilize that strategy in waiting rooms and displaying educational material.
I think that
tends to be pretty effective for just my observation yesterday.
Right, and one of them could be, for instance, how do you read a book to a child?
Right, I think that's
modeling the why, who, what, when, where kind of thing.
Well, and I think it brings up such a great point of connecting with CCOs as we look, at all the different collaboratives and hubs and pieces going on in the state of connecting with the healthcare. And I know in the early learning that's a huge that system of early learning goes across health and education. So I think it's a great partnership to build in. And that is where, from my lens, young kids are, but all kids show up at the doctor.
Right. So
urgent care.
I think we're going to put that down as number 1.
I think that's great.
So what are we going to put? So they would be videos, right? Amy, is what you're.
Yeah, they're just short PSAs. They run, the one we're doing for our parent education collaborative around school readiness and parent engagement, it runs about 2 minutes. It really, I don't want to say it jests, but it does jest about school readiness. But it provides that sort of friendly, family-friendly segue into the importance of what's going on there. And the parents, both parents with the newborn looked at each other and they didn't write anything down, but who's to say they won't next time?
Great.
And also important to remember is some of our families are frightened or afraid or feeling uncomfortable because they don't have literacy skills themselves.
Right.
So just providing the tool of turning the page, every parent has something to offer.
Early literacy.
It dilutes really quickly. And then I'm sorry, autism and
Okay. Thanks, Amy. That was great. And then the idea of family literacy activities. Maybe they do school-based and library-based with food provided. Because really, the nights we did it with no food, we had no family.
Well, and giving away books at those too is
Yes,
really
absolutely.
effective.
We do give away books.
It's really, I think what I heard everybody saying was it's really delivering a campaign that's focused on the family, making this about family, make it about families.
Right.
We want to create the excitement and give them the community level mobilization.
And I would put in across a variety of settings.
Activities for all ages or something.
Because I think there's a lot of settings that those family activities can occur.
Yeah, you
So
know.
for all ages in multiple settings.
Yeah, in multiple settings, that's great. Because we have games that, you know, like a 12-year-old can play with their 5-year-old sibling. So.
Well, and I know a lot of early childhood programs do family nights, and so if they had the tools and some resources, they could do the same type of activities.
So we would
within the family
need a toolkit.
Your charts will be posted.
Provide a clear menu. We need it. So we could, this is
And if you're not
would be good for
ready,
engaging
please
the
finish up and
church,
post
the
your charts.
faith community.
Absolutely.
So churches, schools, libraries,
childcare,
parks.
and just even the faith-based, but there's lots of preschools that aren't kind of up, but a lot of families are.
Right.
Okay, I barely have enough room for 3 here.
Ours are very robust.
They're very tactical levels. These are like really specific strategies. I think we need one that's slightly more general that talks
I think
about.
that gets
we
to
need
the broad communication.
We need there needs to be a broad yet succinct integrated communication plan around this campaign so that so what I mean by that is broad becomes long and if communication is too big, people aren't going to engage in it. So it needs to be broad, but it needs to be succinct in the messaging so that people will read it and feel like they can do something about it. Oh, I can go to this place to learn how to teach, to learn how to read.
I'm sure. Let me write it down.
Oh, it's 2 C's.
Yeah, 2 C's.
It's comprehensive and maybe multifaceted.
Oh, there's a C at the end, yeah.
INCT.
Population.
Broad yet succinct communication plan.
And what did you say, Amy?
Multifaceted. That's incredibly important to talk about. People receive information differently, so being multifaceted, having the folks that are visual learners, having the folks that can pick up a brochure, folks that really need that tool of how do I use that book. So the communication campaign needs to be multifaceted.
It won't go anywhere unless the communication component is successful.
Yeah.
That part is foundational.
Thank you.
Amy, what's your email address?
E. Johnson,
Okay.
Oregon, HF, as in buildinghealthyfamilies.org.
Was it Oregon BHF?
Yes.
So A. Johnson at OregonBHF.org?
Yes.
Okay, I'll send you an email.
Great.
I think we're all breaking up and going back to our chairs, so there might be some moments of silence here.
Thank you.
He's 16 now.
I've had wonderful conversations, and the danger always of putting people into groups is putting them back to the large group. So we're at that point where we're going to do that because I want to honor your time. If you want to stay where you are, that's absolutely fine.
He's on an IEP.
I want to honor your time and get us out of here as close to 10:30 as possible. So I'd like to start with Group 5. If you would talk about the three things that you can. I'm sorry, let's start with Group 1. Because I'm just that anal. I like to go around. So Group 1, can you talk about that? Who's speaking for Group 1?
We were really impressed with Mary Kay's communication skills. So we dominated.
What that means is he doesn't want to do it. So we had quite a wide-ranging discussion, and as you can see, we had more words than we had room for. So one of the members of our group is Amy from Wallowa County, and she's talking about short videos for waiting rooms. And so, the waiting rooms that have all those screens like doctors or Social Security or DMV. So short videos for waiting rooms, and they would be modeling early literacy skills. Family literacy events with activities for all ages in multiple settings. And so maybe putting together some kind of a toolkit so that we can have those family literacy activities in all sorts of different places, really focusing on families rather than parents or kids. And then this is kind of what we think is going to be really important, is a broad yet succinct communication plan with multiple delivery methods, but really having a really solid plan so that we can reach a lot of different people the way that the best method possible.
Thank you. Thank you all to Group 1. Let's give them a hand and their conversation. I'm really, I don't want to use the word impressed because I'm impressed with everything that you all are doing, but I'm really impressed, because I can't think of another word, about being sensitive to how broad this has to be. So when we talk about videos across waiting rooms and Social Security offices, and I heard many conversations throughout the groups talking about building parents' literacy skills and opportunities to do that. So a statewide reading campaign beyond the clips really hones in on the fact that not all parents necessarily have the skill. And so how do you really build that? So thank you. I appreciate your conversation and your time. Group 5. Shayna's over here keeping them on target.
To make this sustainable and easier to apply, $250,000 doesn't mean very close. Use the frameworks that are already in place. The connected activity that includes, that is the early learning hubs. It's already in place. Keep it going. Will be. Part of this could be the Oregon Community Foundation communities that are in place. They already exist. That would be a nice way to double the. We would love the messaging campaigns to be supported in school and the base everywhere, in the villages, on a billboard. I'd love to see a billboard for baby reading. And the emphasize is talking to your children as well as so that all parents know they can do it. What I witness in schools is that parents are often no better equipped than their libraries to do this job, and they don't know how. They don't know it's important. And I don't think we can get the message across just with graphics. We have to teach them. And in the parenting hubs conference, very important. But we really do have to teach them that it's easy. And once they've done a bit, they get that. It's so rewarding. Then their kids are more fun. Their kids are not in the foot. And everything from reading to them, to talking to them, to the conversation. Our librarian had a great idea of extending the summer reading program that has incentives for children and parents to year-round. I think the state library in my right gives local libraries book money to reward children. But extend that to a year-round thing. I know a lot of public libraries have reading hours for 0 to 3 and then 3 to 5, and make that very robust, but also reach out because there are a lot of families that can't travel to the library, so some get to.
Okay, I'm not going to editorialize each one, or we won't get through them. But I'm visual, so I see this bookmobile, and I see this baby reading to their parents, and all over the billboard. So great, thank you. It's 5. We're 4. Yes. Great. I'm Tyler.
So group 4, before we were looking at necessarily how we were going to get there, we were looking at, what's the end goal? We came out with a lot of questions. What's our end goal? Who's the audience? What's the message? What are we looking to accomplish? And those are the things we need to answer before we can really get to how we're going to get there with that $250,000. $250,000 isn't a lot of money, so we believe we're going to need to use it to leverage off other organizations. You can't reinvent the wheel. R&D, which is rip off and duplicate. Look at these other programs. What can we do? Because $250,000 unfortunately isn't enough to build our own programs. So we're going to need to partner with other programs, look at how we can do that, and what can the state and state organizations do together to make a collective impact.
Thank you, Tyler. Let's give group 4 a hand and Tyler back to Tyler. We appreciate it. And we'll give it again for group 5.
So we talked about engaging the business community, that they already have a lot of expertise in marketing, communication, lasting a lot of stuff out to people, logo recognition, all of that. Crystal talked about Intel and how they created a core toolkit for Intel parents, which is beautiful and really well done, and luckily that can be done for all parents. Looking to our business community. And we talked about the tech teams already there, so get there. And then to collaborate with different kinds of parenting classes in all different kinds of things. Prenatal classes in hospital, childbirth classes, the parenting hubs, and child visits, tracking reading for patients. When you go home, when you're getting to the hospital, I think we're able to focus in that bag of full formulas that goes along with it. So,
We talk about engaging boards, and these are community case boards. Obviously, in my world, school boards are elected from the community, and they're a really big conduit, and the advocacy goes both ways. Not only do they advocate for who has elected them, but they also need to advocate from the school district to the community. The other one is we really need to answer the why question. I think we were headed when we looked at this group. Why should I care? And I think that, we all say we know that, but I think we really need to take time to flesh it out. I participated in an activity where we had to do 20 words of a sentence on whatever the group was, or kind of market something. And I had 15 minutes as a partner, and I gave her my 20 words sentence, and she looked at me and said, why should I care? I answered that question, and then her next question came was, why should I care? And after about 15 minutes, we really got it hung in on did you care? Because if we don't have the why, the what, and the how, isn't going to make any difference. So I think we've got this is really care. The other thing on engaging and empowering parents summarizes a lot of what's said. I would put an asterisk with parents because full-time parents, we need to be really guardians, grandparents, I think the homeless students, who are those significant others or adults in their lives, and they're not necessarily the traditional family that people think of. We also need to be careful that we're dealing with, regardless of their language or literacy status of the parents, it's a major issue. And we want to use natural touch points, very similar to what people talked about here. And let's not leave out the faith community. When we're looking at large groups of families, how do you engage them? The faith community is an awesome place. We have public health, work, schools, Head Starts.
Thank you. Thank you, group 2. Our last but not least, group 3.
Okay. So we have a few ideas up here that I am going to make some groups with for the sake of having three big ideas. So we talked about having a statewide message, but it needs to be more than just a message that says read to your children, because we know that that's not going to resonate. So we talked about messages that encourage people to talk to their children and play with their children as well, because we know that those also obviously have a huge impact on early literacy. And then these three kind of go together as well.
Good job.
So we also talked a lot about the importance of making sure that whatever comes out of this work has to be connected with other initiatives to ensure a common thread. And that whatever this campaign ends up being should have some measurement goals, some targeted outcomes that also align with the other work that's taking place. And potentially leveraging as part of a larger school readiness campaign and then ultimately use it across the educational continuum. And then the last two kind of have more to do with making sure that this makes sense at the local level and that there's local buy-in. So we talked about having a menu of clear options and different strategies to engage different communities and different populations within the state. And then targeting areas and populations and understanding how to best to engaging them in the process. So we talked about, for example, school districts that serve a large percentage of Latino students and African American students, for example, and recognizing that the messages and the types of activities and strategies that take place may look different from community to community, but still ultimately get us to the same outcome. So that's what we're doing.
All of your really thoughtful conversations. This is incredible. One of my learnings is that in a 2-hour period, you cannot get a full conversation about a statewide reading campaign. However, what you've done is to jumpstart it, and we really appreciate that. Now, the video is 15 minutes, so I know that we're not going to be able to do that justice. So this is what I'd like to ask you to do. If you would write down the link. Swati, would you give them the link for the Children's Institute, because it's the video that's on your website.
Yeah, do you want me to just
Oh, okay.
Are you ready to let them know?
Yeah, we can follow up and do it
Send us
that
the
way.
link, would be great.
Yeah, so our website is childinst.org, and the governor's speaking at the National Press Club video that I mentioned before on the regular reading campaign is on there. But I think, and I sent that link to you.
That's the one I was just going to show. So I can send that to you by email, because I'd like you to collect your cards, your tent cards, your name cards, so that I know who's here. If you will put an email address on there, if I don't have it. If you have a printed card, then I have your email address. If you made a card today, I won't have your email address, so please put those down. However, I'm pretty good at finding folks. If I get your name, I can just about figure out how to get a hold of you too. So, yes, please.
I wanted to just quickly say something that was in my mind as Brett was speaking scrapbook from the last group, and that is that I really just want to, well, thank you for your time, but assure you that this is, I was thinking as we were brainstorming, so exciting and fun, but I'm guessing that many of you in this room have sat and brainstormed about the things that you wish we could do many times over. And so when you talked about outcomes for the campaign, it just triggered in my mind that I just wanted to say that we are highly accountable to actually doing the things that we have said we are going to do with the investment in early literacy. And so I want to thank you for being here today and thinking, and then I just want to commit to you that this is our time. This is the time when we're going to take the conversations we've been having for 10 or 15 years and actually turn them into some things that are going to make a difference for kids on their items.
Thank you, Brittany. And I also want to say that we have an internal staff working group that will take this information back and still move forward. So I'd like to first, before I forget, say that a cell phone is found in the bathroom. So if you lost your cell phone, then I do have it, and I'll leave it at the front desk for someone else. This is when I started, I talked about 3-2-1. So what did I want out of 3?
3 contacts.
3 contacts. The 3 contacts are for networking, for continuing the conversations that we started here. And so if you would make sure you have those 3 contacts, those are your cards. That's for your own personal use and personal information. And then I needed out of 2 what?
Contributions.
2 contributions. So hold on to that thought. And then the 1 was what? The book. The book. Wow, you are the okay, so you put down 2 things on your index card that I'd like to collect. And I'd like to ask you, just in wrapping up, to share one of those. So Mary, I know you have to leave, but if you would share yours, and then we'll start around.
My contributions?
Yes. The 1, just 1.
Well, I'm confused. Is that my contribution today or the grand contribution?
Moving forward.
The grand contribution.
The grand contribution.
Well, I can contribute all the public libraries in the state.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
And I'm not going to tell them I said that.
Thank you for coming too. Can we just go down the row and around? If you're not ready, just say pass. It's fine. Okay.
I'll just say that I'm willing to be available personally and have our organization be available to think of these sort of connecting the dots of some of the strategies that were shared, if that's useful.
Great, thank you.
I don't necessarily have personal contributions to give, but we academic librarians know tons of people at our own institutions.
Okay.
And so my contribution will be to spread the word to people.
That's a very important contribution. Thank you.
Kind of thing, right, I guess, through word, through our association, give you a chance to have multiple conferences during the year, and a lot of times the same curriculum, spreading the word that we're supposed to promote.
And it's very important to me that student voice be involved in everything we do. I call it the voice of policy.
I'm clear over here, sorry.
She's clear over there as I look at you.
You're in Brent Finance Tag.
All right.
The Oregon Community Foundation. I can offer a connection to our existing parenting education hubs across the state and the Reading for All campaign that took place in Marion, Hope, and Hannibal counties over the past 3 years or so.
She's in blue.
I can contribute collaboration with the I could use my network of PTA leaders all across the state to spread the word and practices
I can utilize OISC's network of students, student learning resources, students' time, as well as during the year.
I can share a intellectual property around a proven reading intervention system now that has skills and
And I think that our share messaging via the infrastructure that we have and the stakeholder communications that we have
Ken Herman's ODE, got quite a bit of experience in the campaigns sort of stuff and working on videos and documents and leaflets and pamphlets and stuff like that. So in terms of helping frame the message,
I have a presentation on the Head Start representing the last paper, so that's the access to information for enthusiasm, and also small to medium resource groups directly with parents and insights.
Our organization has a network of over 2,000 school administrators who then can impact educators, teachers, they can impact parents, and they can also impact students. So that's the network of bringing school administrators.
And I'm Carrie Moskin, also from Oregon Department of Education, and what I can do is help to provide a consistent message that runs through what we're telling teachers with the Common Core State Standards and educator effectiveness with literacy within all of our communities.
Margie Rosenwald. I can contribute background on how to train parents in early literacy skills that they can work with their children. So games and activities, the sounds of the letters, playing words, that kind of thing. I've had success with reading results in training parents to be very effective teachers of other people's kids and their own kids. Yes, I did.
I heard that.
I forgot to mention, if anyone wants just a little quick background around the national campaign for some of the Oregon communities, I have these if you feel it, or if you want to have some nice ground, it might just help us brainstorm. Sorry.
Heidi McGowan, I can help connect this to the rest of the
From the Early Learning Division Office of Child Care, we've got a lot of contractors that have a lot of touch points with both child care providers, and then of course there's families. So those as messages, any training opportunities, we can really intentionally think about getting those out into the field statewide.
I have some background in working with teachers on how to connect to students' families, specifically around sharing student reading data with families.
Yeah, I think the data component is something that ODE can contribute as well, depending on how we want to build a communications plan around this and measure the outcomes. I was thinking about how back in 2007 when the state board adopted the new diploma requirements, we stopped calling it the high school diploma and it became the Oregon diploma. And so the folks at ODE and other organizations that continue to do work around K through 12 outcomes and graduation rates and things like that, making sure that this is a part of those conversations and embedding it. And I can also make a healthy dent in the muffins whenever we have
Great. Not a clumsy muffin.
No. And
Amy, would you share with us what you will do as a result of our conversation?
So I'd be glad to contribute our community solution action plan around third grade reading, as well as our expertise in developing passion around cross-sector collaboration related to reading.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for your time and your contributions. I'm going to, again, encourage you to watch the video. It's not one of those, oh, it's the governor. It really is, oh, it's the governor. And it really is exciting. When I started at Swampy and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago and told me about the video, and when I watched it, I was like, I'm so proud to work for a governor who has his head on straight. And he comes from the heart. So really, take the opportunity to watch the video. I will send you the link. I also gave you a copy of the equity lens that Ben referenced. So please take an opportunity to read through that. That will give you a grounding on OEIB's beliefs around equity. And the lens particularly focuses on racial equity. And as we think about a campaign, we're talking about across the board. So please pay attention to that. Share that with your organization. Again, I want to thank you for your time. It has been just so valuable to me. Leave your cards with what you're going to do next. I'll remind you to forget. And please leave your name tents with your books on the back so that I have a record of attendance.
I was wondering if there's a way that you could give us the attendance list of contact information for this meeting so we can.
Unless there's anyone objecting to that, I have no problem doing it. Okay, so I'll make sure I do that. Anything else for the good of the order? That's what the initials at the bottom of the agenda, for the good of the order.
Doris, nice job.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it, and drive safely. Please take water. And again, the closet muffin meter.
I'll see you.